Well, hello everyone, and welcome to ProLine, the college football preview edition. Today we're going to take a look at the Big Ten for 2015, look at some off-season changes, what to look for from a Las Vegas betting perspective, as well as scheduling and returning personnel plus changes. I'm John Cranton, joined by Las Vegas Sports Services handicapper Jeff Saad. We're going to take a look at these games. First, tell you what we have for specials coming up for the summer. You want to get Jim Feist 4 weeks of NFL preseason. It's an early bird special. You get 4 full weeks for $29. That's going to include Jim Feist's preseason game of the year. Just call the number on your screen. And Jeff, you have a special too for the month of August from Las Vegas Sports Services.
Yes, as you know, the preseason football is really a really good time to make money. A lot of people don't pass up preseason and think it's just too hard, but really a lot of handicappers think the preseason is time to make all the money. You're going to get the entire preseason on my 5-star plays at LVSS for only $19. Just call the number on your screen. You get the entire month of August, the entire preseason for only $19. It's 1-866-575-8916. The number's right there on your screen, and you get the entire preseason LVSS. And this is the time to make money, and you want to take advantage. Just call LVSS for the entire preseason, just $19.
Okay, good. Let's get into the Big Ten. I'm going to start with the East Division, and really we have to start with Ohio State. 30-3 record under Urban Meyer, coming off that national title last year. My goodness, they did it with a third-string freshman quarterback. You also had Wisconsin was 6-2 in the conference. Iowa and Nebraska were 5-3. So the Buckeyes clearly have dominated and are the team to beat. And what they did late last year, the Ohio State Buckeyes did, is still absolutely astounding. They were a 4-point underdog to Wisconsin, won the game 59-0. They played Alabama, beat them 42-35 as a 7.5-point underdog. Then again, they were underdog to Oregon as a +6 dog and really routed the Ducks 42-20. So Jeff, they got the number one coach, the number one team. How is 2015 going to start out? You could start with the Buckeyes preview.
Well, this team is just loaded, and they have everything going for them right now. Not only do they have talent on both sides of the ball, they have a schedule that's set up for them to go undefeated once again. And they have the biggest problem this team has is they have too many great quarterbacks, and I'm not sure what they're going to do. Urban Meyer said he's going to decide in the middle of training camp on the starter, but of course they have Cardale Jones, who came through in those last three games last year. J.T. Barrett that played the rest of the season after Braxton Miller got hurt. So that's going to be the biggest problem is picking one and then keeping the other two guys happy. So that's a great problem to have. Most teams would like to have that problem. But they have 7 back on offense, 7 on defense. They're 13-2 to the over the last 15 games. The last 9 road games, 8-1, straight up 6-3 against the spread. Running back Zeke Elliott's back. Michael Thomas, Jalen Marshall is back in the receiving corps. Defense, Joey Bosa, Adolphus Washington's back on the defensive line, and they have to replace Steve Miller and Michael Bennett. In the spring game, they had 99,000 for the spring game. That's ridiculous. I mean, that's 99,000 people. Every college in the country would love to have that for the biggest game of the year. But in that game, Cardale Jones was 19-42 for 304 yards, 2 TDs. The schedule. They open at Virginia Tech. Well, that's going to be a big revenge game. That was one game I lost last year. And then they have home games against Hawaii, Northern Illinois, and Western Michigan. It's kind of been a trend for Ohio State the last couple of decades. They just don't schedule tough non-conference games. They always throw those MAC teams in there to get a couple of wins. But even the conference schedule is relatively easy. They don't play Wisconsin, and not until the last 2 games. They play the 2 toughest games, Michigan State and Michigan. So with all that talent and the easy schedule, there's no reason why Ohio State can't run the board again and be in the championship game again, John.
Well, do you think Meyer is the best recruiter in the country? Is that his secret of his success?
Best recruiter and probably the best coach strategy-wise. The guy is just he's worth every penny. You can't say that about every coach, but Urban Meyer is probably worth every penny that he makes.
Yeah, you certainly can. Well, I'm going to take a look at the Michigan State Spartans because while Ohio State has gotten all the accolades, Spartans have had some really good teams last couple of years. They're coming off an 11-2 season, 7-1 in the Big Ten. In fact, they've been covering betting numbers as well, 9-4 against the spread last year in Las Vegas, and that continues a trend. The Spartans 18-8-1 against the spread, and they're going to have a very good team again. 6 starters back on offense, 7 on defense. One change is that defensive coordinator Pat Narduzzi. He left to be the head coach at the Pitt Panthers. I'm going to start with the offense, and boy, is this team loaded. First of all, they averaged 43 points per game last year. That was 7th in the country, with exceptional balance, over 230 yards rushing and passing per game. That ground game was 21st in the country. They got a terrific senior quarterback in Connor Cook coming back. He's been starting since his sophomore year. Very strong every year, and last year was 24 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, over 3,000 yards passing, 58% completions. In fact, he's 16-1 as a Big Ten starter for Coach Mark D'Antonio. Now, they do lose their top 2 running backs, and 2 key wide receivers are gone. However, they got quite a bit of talent and experience back. Despite that, first of all, in the backfield, 6'1 junior running back Delton Williams is back, 316 yards, 5.9 yards per carry, and he's not alone. Another junior running back, in R.J. Shelton, averaged 7 yards per carry in limited action. And the wide receivers do have some experience. Senior McGarrett King Jr. had 404 yards receiving, and then they got a junior tight end in Josiah Price. He had 374 yards, is 6'4", so it's a team that really is loaded and is going to be very strong with balance on offense. Again, I think they're going to be outstanding. The defense, 2 years ago, they were number 1 in the nation in total defense. Did lose some key players, but they didn't slip that much. Last year, 21.5 points per game they gave up. That was 22nd in the country. And they have a large crop of defensive talent returning. You got a terrific senior defensive end in Shalik Calhoun. He had 8 sacks. And the secondary also has very strong players in Darian Hicks. He's a cornerback, and Monte Nicholson is a safety. So this is going to be an outstanding defense once again. The schedule for Michigan State, this team lost only 2 games last season. One of them was at Oregon. It was an early game way out to Oregon. It happened to be a hot, muggy day, and despite outplaying Oregon for 3.5 quarters, they wilted down the stretch, probably in some of that heat. But they're going to have a rematch, and it's going to come early, week 2. The difference is this one is going to be at Michigan State on September 12th. Now, the downside is that from October 10th to November 21st, Spartans are going to play 4 of 6 games on the road. Their road schedule at Rutgers, at Michigan, at Nebraska, at Ohio State. And the revenge game, one of them is going to be Ohio State, and that'll be November 21st. Unfortunately, it's at Columbus. And that was a game last year where Michigan State was a 4-point home favorite, and the Buckeyes won 49-37. Michigan State was 6-1 against the spread at home last year. However, they have not been very good at home for over the last decade, 29-40 against the spread, so have been overvalued at home at times, although that wasn't the case last year. All right, Jeff, how about the other state rival for Michigan State, and that is the Wolverines? Are they in rebuilding mode?
Definitely rebuilding, and an offense could be a big problem here in Jim Harbaugh's first year. It might take him a couple of years to rebuild this program. They have 9 back on offense, but that's not necessarily a good thing after what we saw last year. 8 back on defense. They were 5-7 against the spread last year. In 2014, they were 112th in the nation in scoring, 112th in passing, 64th in rushing, and the quarterback's going to be a question mark too. Shane Morris. He's, let's see, last year he was no TDs, 3 interceptions, 128 yards. In the spring game, he passed for 135 yards and 1 touchdown. The spring game final score was 7-0, which tells you a little bit about the offense on this team.
Bo Schembechler would have loved that.
Yeah, that's the only person that'd be happy with that score. Last year, the Michigan quarterbacks threw 10 touchdowns, 18 interceptions. Morris completed 35 of his passes. Offensive line gave out 26 sacks. So that's going to be the big rebuilding job here for Harbaugh. Running back Ty Isaac is available. He's transferred from USC, didn't play last year. And junior running back Derek Green, who averaged 5.7 yards per carry before missing the second half of the season with an injury. He'll be back. The defense is going to be the strong point, of course, here. New defense coordinator DJ Durkin and her. It's a good group that should be one of the better ones in the Big Ten. Linebackers Joe Bolden and Ben Gideon are strong. On the defensive line returns, junior defensive tackles Chris Wormley and Ryan Glasgow. Secondary will benefit from the return of talented freshman Jabril Peppers from injuries. The schedule, they open at Utah, then they have 3 home games against Oregon State, UNLV, and BYU. Conference, they have to play road games at Maryland, at Penn State. They get Michigan State and Ohio State at home. Because of those, they'll probably win 3 out of 4 in those non-conference games. That might get them to a 7-5 record and to a bowl game this year. But I think 7-5 would be. They should be happy with that right now with in Harbaugh's first year.
All right, keep in mind that Michigan has not been covering games on the road. They're 19-25 straight up, 18-26 against the spread the last 44 road games. All right, I'm going to take a look at the Maryland Terrapins off a season. It's going 7-6 straight up, 4-4 in the Big Ten. They've been rebuilding the last couple of years for Randy Edsall, and they'll be rebuilding again because only 5 starters are back on offense, 3 on defense. However, last 4 years they've gone from 2 wins to 4, 7, and 7. So Edsall's doing a pretty good job with this program. Last year, they averaged 28.5 points per game, which is very good. However, they did it with absolutely no running game. They were 111th in the nation in rushing, just 121.7 yards per game. So, unfortunately, they have a quarterback back in senior Caleb Rowe. Now, he didn't play a lot last year. 5 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 489 yards, 63% completions. But he missed 6 games with an injury, so he was supposed to be much of the starter. And unfortunately, he missed a spring practice, too, recovering from the injury. So that's a concern. The backfield has got to be better. They do have senior running back Brandon Ross returning, 776 yards, 4.7 yards per carry 2 years ago in 2013. And last year, he slipped to just 417 yards. And one of the problems with Maryland was they had a very young offensive line, so that's where a lot of the experience returns. And they do like to run the football. They do like to use 2 running back systems under Randy Edsall and Mike Loxley running the offense, but they just weren't very productive as far as rushing last year. A couple of their top wide receivers are gone to the NFL, which is a key concern. They do have senior Marcus Leak back with 297 yards. He's the only returning starter, though. They have an interesting sophomore to keep in mind. 6'2" wide receiver, Jawan Winfrey, played well late last year despite just 158 yards and a couple of touchdowns. But also they have a guy named Laverne Jacobs. He was suspended last year, but back in 2013 he played for this team and played pretty well with 47 catches. The defense, though, was a major problem last year. 30.2 points per game. That ranked 89th in the nation. So while the offense has some promise, the defense certainly has some question marks. The Terps have a new 4-3 defense under defensive coordinator Keith Dudzinski. The move is probably going to be good for the roster that they have, particularly with the nose tackle in Yannick Nago. He had 6 sacks last year, and he is back. But there are some new linebackers. And the secondary, though, looks to be the strength for Maryland with Sean Davis and A.J. Hendy, they're both seniors. And Hendy didn't play last year because of a suspension, so they're probably going to be improved defensively, but the key really will be getting this ground game on tap. Finally, the schedule, kind of an easy early schedule with Richmond, Bowling Green, and South Florida, so you're looking at a Maryland team that's probably going to be 3-0. And you got some road games, though, at West Virginia, at Ohio State, at Iowa, Michigan State, and Rutgers. That's going to be very difficult. So possibly a winning season here, 6 to 7 wins and a bowl, but anything in the 9 to 10 win mark with that road schedule, I think is going to be very difficult for Maryland. All right, Jeff, who else do you see going in the Big Ten?
Well, let's look at Penn State. 6 offense and 6 defense returning, but the offense was the biggest problem last year. The average 20.6 yards, 20.6 points per game. That's 113th in the country. They were 120th in rushing, 2.9 yards per carry. And the offensive line allowed 44 sacks, the most in the conference. And plus, they lose tackle Donovan Smith to the NFL. But so that's going to be the biggest question mark there. Quarterback Christian Hackenberg had 12 TDs, 15 interceptions, completed 55.8% of his passes. Receiving core is sound with sophomore Deshaun Hamilton and junior Geno Lewis. Akil Lynch is back at running back, 4.6 yards per carry last year. The defense should again be one of the best in the Big Ten. They allowed just 18.6 points per game last year, 7th in the nation. Senior defensive end Garrett Sickles, tackle Anthony Zetto is first team All Big Ten choice. Plus Austin Johnson, sophomore Torrance Brown, and defensive tackle Antoine White will step in. Penn State's 21-13 to the over the last 34 games is very surprising, of course, with that weak offense and great defense. But I think that's more of a case of the totals being posted very low numbers, maybe 37 to 40 is like that. But that's one thing to keep in mind. Schedule is pretty weak. That's going to be the best part. That's going to be the best thing about Penn State this year. They kicked off to a 6-0 start. Their first game was at Tempo, and Tempo hasn't beaten them since 1941. So that's they have 5 home games against Buffalo, Rutgers, San Diego State, Army, and Indiana. They have a couple of road games. They have to play at Ohio State and Michigan State, and they get Michigan at home. So with that home schedule, they should be able to pull an 8-4 season, even though the offense is going to be a big question mark again, John.
All right, I'm going to take a look at the Indiana Hoosiers because they're off a season going just 4-8 straight up, only 1-7 in the Big Ten and 5-7 against the spread. However, they were probably a better team than that and should be in for a bounce-back year because there was a lot of injuries. The offense returned 7 starters, and so does the defense. And what happened last year is the offense was really good early on until quarterback Nate Sudfeld got injured. And this is a guy who struggled last year with the injuries, and because of that, their offense went from 28 points per game 2 years ago down to 25 per game last year. And Sudfeld, 2 years ago when he was healthy, had 21 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. That slipped to 6 touchdowns and 3 picks last year, but he is back for his senior season, so it should be a much improved passing offense. And the thing is, this was one of the best rushing offenses in the nation last year, 10th in rushing with 263.6 yards rushing per game. And they were good enough early on last year to go toe-to-toe with the Missouri Tigers and the eventual SEC champions, or in that division. They beat Missouri 31-27 on the road, and they even went toe-to-toe with Ohio State in Columbus for 3 plus quarters, before losing 42-27. So there's hope for a better campaign if they stay healthy. And the ground game is going to get an interesting player in Jordan Howard. He's a junior, and he transfers from UAB, which got rid of their football program. And he was terrific last year with 132 yards rushing per game, including a couple of huge games. So he's an interesting talent. They do have some question marks at wide receiver. Shun Harris II is back, 168 yards, and they have a tall sophomore in 6'4" Simi Cobbs, but he has less than 120 yards. So that's something to watch. But overall, it looks like a talented offense. The defense, though, had some major problems last year, 32.8 points per game allowed. They have some weaknesses up front from last year, and that's going to continue. The strength is with the secondary, junior cornerback Antonio Allen. He was honorable mention in the Big Ten, and he is back. And they have Donovan Clark, who's a sophomore safety, who's pretty good. So they got to find a way to stop the run, but most assuredly the secondary is going to be pretty good. And the schedule actually offers a lot of hope for Indiana. Look what they open with the first 4 games: Southern Illinois, Florida International, Western Kentucky, and then Wake Forest. So a team that only won 4 games last year could start this year 4-0. And then they got some tough games in mid-season. They're going to be hosting Ohio State after that easy start. But the way to look at Indiana for me is, as far as totals, which I like to play, they're on a 15-9 run over the total overall. And with what should be a really good offense and a suspect defense at times, particularly on the line, I think that trend is going to continue. I look for the Hoosiers to be a good team to look at over the total. All right, Jeff, the Scarlet Knights at Rutgers, they surprised last year. They have a shot to do that again?
Probably not. They're probably down a notch this year. They returned 7 on offense, 6 on defense. Last year, 8-5 straight up, 8-5 against the spread. Biggest question mark is going to be the quarterback. You have to replace Gary Nova. He was there for 4 years, and he's the school's all-time leader in TD passes. They have sophomore Chris Laviano, who had only 28 passing attempts last year, and plus sophomore Hayden Redding, who transferred from LSU. He's also in the mix. Laviano was 8 of 10, 140 yards, and 2 TDs in the spring game, so he's probably the leading candidate right now. 2 top running backs are back. Robert Martin, 5.0 yards per carry, and Josh Hicks at 6.4. The wide receivers, Leonte Carew is back. In the spring game, the top wide receiver is Carlton Agudosi. He had a couple of touchdown catches. Defense allowed, usually Rutgers always has a great defense. It's at least the last 10, 15 years, but this year the defense last year allowed 30.2 points per game, and that's going to be the biggest problem here. They allow 6.6 yards per play. Tackle Darius Hamilton, linebacker Steve Longa, and Kamoko Tarai to provide some hope for improvement. Safety Kai Hester is in after last year he didn't play because he transferred from Miami, so he'll be back. The schedule, the open versus Norfolk State FCS team, then they're home against Washington State, Kansas, and they have another later in the season, a non-conference game at Army. The Big Ten Conference schedule is very tough. At home they get Michigan State, Ohio State, Nebraska, Maryland, and on the road they have to play Penn State, Wisconsin, and Michigan. So for those reasons, that schedule is the main reason. I think they're going to do another 8-5 season. They'll be very lucky to get 7 wins this year, John.
All right, let's move to the Big Ten West Division. Before we do that, if you want to subscribe to Jim Fife's YouTube page, it's called Sports Betting. Just click on the link above us and you'll get updates on videos that Jim has on free picks and other updates for college and NFL games that are coming up. Also, if you want to go to the jimfice.com website, you can click on the link above us as well, and that'll take you right to the site. There's articles on football previews, there's free stats, and new members will get a $50 credit just for signing up.